All right, so today we are going to paint this cute eucalyptus leaf. And our mantra for this week is don't forget to breathe. We are going to be using a few different colors in our eucalyptus leaf. So we won't be using the typical colors that you might see in a real eucalyptus branch, but we're going to be adding some yellows, some indigos, some magentas, and some turquoise. So I'm going to explain to you what you will need for tonight's class as you are getting everything ready. First, I am using a 5x7 piece of, this is actually a hot pressed watercolor paper. That means that it's nice and smooth. But you are more than welcome to use cold pressed paper. Cold pressed paper is a little bit more rough. It all depends on your preference. Hot press, I find, does help a little bit when you're writing words, especially tiny words, but you'll make do if you have cold pressed. So I have a 5x7 sheet. You're more than welcome to do it a little bit larger if you want to work a little bit larger. Your watercolors, or if you're joining us and using acrylic or oil, that's okay too. I'll explain to you the colors once we get started, but you'll basically need all of your primary colors. Then you will need, of course, water. We can't be painting watercolor without a cup of water. Your brush for today, I'm using a round size 6. If you would like to use a slightly smaller brush, perhaps a round size 4 or even a round size 2, depending on the size of your eucalyptus branch. Here's my hand for a little bit of size comparison. So it's about the size of the L of my hand. And I find that a round size 6 brush, this is a black velvet brush. You can find links to this brush on my website if you're interested in purchasing yourself. I am using a towel. We will need a towel or a paper towel tonight to dab water off and dry our brush. And I'm going to explain how to sketch out your eucalyptus branch. So you'll need a pencil and a kneaded eraser. And last but not least, you will need a micron pen. Let's see here it is. Nope. So the micron pen that I will use tonight, because I can't find my slightly bigger one, is a size 01. You can use a 03, a 05, it depends on what you have, or just a ballpoint pen. And that is it. So we can get started. I'm going to lift this up just a little bit so that you can see both pictures as we start to sketch. So tonight's mantra for this week, don't forget to breathe. I decided to do a eucalyptus branch because eucalyptus oil tends to be good for sinus congestion, and sometimes I need a reminder to myself to just sit down and take a few breaths. Sometimes I get a little bit too busy and I forget to relax a little bit, and oftentimes having a routine to take deep breaths. Sometimes we do, at least when I was a school teacher, we did square breathing where you breathe in, hold, out, hold, and we would teach kids that in order to calm themselves down. And that was always a great way as a teacher myself to really slow down, take a breath, and remember that sometimes just sitting in silence and breathing can be the best thing for you to do at that moment. So that's what this week's mantra is to remind you to do, is to just breathe. So you can get out your straight edge. I'm just using a spare sheet of paper. We're going to draw out our lines first. I'm going to do 2 lines of text. You can fit yours all into one if you'd like, but I'm going to do 2. We're going to write out our words first to make sure that we have space for the words. Otherwise, if I do the drawing first, I tend to do it a little bit too big and I cover up my words. All right, so 2 lines here. I'm going to do don't forget to and then breathe on the last line. So I'm going to more or less try to keep it in the center here. Don't forget to, and then breathe. As I'm writing it out here, I'm spacing out the letters a little bit and I'm writing all in capitals. B-R-E-A-T-H-E. All right, now that we have our mantra written out, now we're ready for sketching out the eucalyptus branch. My branch, I decided to add a little curve. You're more than welcome to do the same thing. You can add double curve if you'd like. You can curve it the opposite direction. It's all up to what you want to do. I am going to leave a little bit of white space though at the top, and of course some white space on the sides in case I do want to frame it at some point. So I'm going to start by drawing out my stem. So I'll start at the top. I am going to do an arch for this stem, so I do want it to curve slightly. And I want it to stop about above this word forget. All right, so now that I have my stem, let me do it a little darker so that you can see. Now I'm ready to sketch out my leaves. The very first leaf I'm going to do is this leaf at the top. So I want it a little bit more pointed and a little bit more round at the bottom. So it almost looks like a spade or a shovel. I want it about the size of my thumbnail. I don't want it too much smaller or it might be difficult for me to paint. And now when we look at eucalyptus branches, if you've ever seen them in person on an actual eucalyptus tree, the leaves are in sets of 2. And so you have the set of 2 leaves that are joining together and they look like a bow tie. And the bow ties are actually going to be alternating as they go down the stem. So you'll have a bow tie that's horizontal, then a bow tie that's vertical, horizontal, vertical. Now the way that we can show that when we're sketching it is we're going to show a bow tie, and then I like to call this second, this one below, a hamburger. So the bow tie is like this, where it looks like a bow tie, and then we're going to do 2 hamburger buns. Bow tie, 2 hamburger buns. Bow tie, 2 hamburger buns. So the hamburger buns is what it's going to look like when the branches are, or the leaves are facing you. Okay, so we're going to start sketching that out. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you can see it better on my sketch. So we're going to start at this very top and we're going to start with our bow tie. So I'm going to start, my bow tie is going to come out from the branch. So I have a tie on one side, and of course my bow tie, I need to have 2 sides to a bow tie. So here's our bow tie. After the bow tie underneath, we're going to do a hamburger. So I'm going to make the bun of the hamburger, the first bun, and the stem, if you can see the stem, is going to come in the center of this hamburger bun. Then the one on the bottom, I need the bun on the bottom. They're going to be connecting. So here I have where it's connecting here. We're going to eventually erase a part of that stem, but we aren't going to do that quite yet. Okay, so we have our bow tie, our hamburger, back to bow tie. As we move down with our eucalyptus branch, our leaves are going to get slightly bigger. So keep that in mind. And because eucalyptus branches are not perfect in nature, of course, your bow ties don't have to be perfect either. So here's another bow tie. You notice that it's not completely round. And now back to our hamburger bun. So my second hamburger bun is going to be a little bit bigger. This hamburger bun won't be as perfect as this top one. So the top to the hamburger bun, the bottom of this hamburger bun is going to be a little bit skinnier. I want to keep them kind of different. Okay, bow tie, hamburger bun, bow tie, hamburger bun, another bow tie. Maybe I'll overlap this bow tie with the hamburger bun. Here's my other bow tie. Another hamburger bun. Maybe this one will be, now maybe this hamburger bun, I might do kind of a heart hamburger bun for the top. So you see how it's kind of a heart shape with the hamburger bun? And now the bottom of the hamburger bun. So it's always in that 2 by 2, 2 by 2. So we're doing this as we're going down. Another bow tie. Remember, our bow ties are getting bigger as they're coming towards the bottom of our eucalyptus branch. So this bow tie is going to be bigger than this bow tie. One more hamburger bun. And I don't want to end with a hamburger bun. I actually want to end with a bow tie. So I'm going to end with a bow tie that's going underneath the hamburger bun. If you need to take out this last hamburger bun and bow tie, that's okay too. Remember that your sketch might look different than mine. So, as you're finishing your sketch, remember that we have this spade-like shovel on top, and we're alternating between bow ties and hamburger buns. Bow ties, hamburger buns, and we're getting slightly larger as we go down to the bottom. Obviously, this is a very stylized eucalyptus branch. It's not very true to life, but that's what makes it unique. So as we are painting, this doesn't really come into play until we talked about the stem and we paint the stem. And when we paint the stem, we'll be painting through the bow ties, the center of the bow ties. But when we get to these hamburger buns, the stem is going to go through the top bun because that's the one that's in the back. And the one that's in the front, we will not see the stem. So do you notice the top hamburger bun, the stem goes through, the bottom one it does not. The top it goes through, the bottom it does not. So we can start to erase the line out of the bottom of the hamburger bun. So the top goes through, the bottom will erase. The top it goes through, the bottom we erase. The top it goes through, and the bottom we erase. All right, now that we have our sketch, now we're ready to paint. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so that we can talk about our colors. Your colors, you are welcome to mix whatever colors you would like for your eucalyptus branch. For my eucalyptus branch, I'm going to be painting with a few different colors, one being indigo. So I'm going to mix that now from on my palette. I'm going to grab some water on a section of my palette. Then I'll grab some indigo. Indigo is like a jeans color. It's a very dark blue, like a blue jean. And I want this blue jean color. I'll show you with a little example. It's going to be about like this. Then I'm going to mix a turquoise because I do want a turquoise color here. If you have a turquoise color in your palette, you're more than welcome to use it. Here's turquoise. Remember, turquoise is a mix of blue and green. And this turquoise, I don't want that bright. That's kind of a bright turquoise for me. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to dusty up my turquoise by adding some brown. And when I add a little bit of brown, it just kind of takes that vibrance away, because I don't want my eucalyptus to be this bright. I want it to be a little bit more dusty. So there's my turquoise. And I will be using a color that's already pre-mixed. It's called Green Gold. It's a color by Daniel Smith. If you see these colors and you're interested in kind of purchasing it yourself, I'm going to get different water. That was kind of had some indigo in it. All of these colors and the colors that I like to use with my botanical paintings are on my website. You can look them up. There's links to where to purchase them at Dick Blick Art Supplies. And then the last color that I want to mix up is a magenta, which I don't really have to mix it, but I do want to kind of have it somewhere on my palette just so I have it and so it's ready to go. Oh, and I might use a little bit of purple. So I'll show you. This is a carbazole violet. But the carbazole violet I'll probably just drop in. And last but not least, I'm going to be using a little bit of green. This green is one of my favorite green colors that Daniel Smith makes. It's called Undersea Green. It's a granulating color that is a mixture of some blue tones, some green, and some brown. Now, I'm not sponsored by Daniel Smith Watercolors. I just like them. So this is just from purely me using them. All right, so we are going to be using a combination of these colors, but we're going to start with base colors for each of these eucalyptus branches. So my base colors are going to either be turquoise, this undersea green, or a light indigo. Then I'm going to drop in some of these more vibrant colors like the green gold. I might drop in every so often. My magenta I'll drop in, but not in every leaf. And the same with the purple. Okay? Because you notice that I'm not putting them on every leaf. I'm kind of choosing every third for like this highlight color. All right, so we're going to start at the top. And of course, here I go spilling water all over the part that's supposed to be clean. All right, so here we go. So we will start. I'll bring my water in. We're going to start with a light layer of green. And I'm actually going to do more than one leaf. So I have quite a bit of water in this one leaf. And because I have a lot of water here, I'm going to actually skip 2 leaves. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to paint these 2 as well. The reason why is because I need them to dry a little bit before I drop in any more color. All right, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so that you can see what's going on. All right, now I want to drop in a little bit of color. So I'm going to start with a little bit of this green gold at the top. So I'm going to drop it in the top. And then towards the stem, I'm going to take just a little bit of indigo. Let me take out some of this water in here. And just touch some indigo at the stem. And now while this is drying just a little bit, I'm going to drop in some color here as well. So maybe I'll take a little bit of turquoise. Maybe at the top I'll add in a little bit of magenta. Now it looks like it's all smearing together, and that's fine because what we're going to do is we'll clean our brush. And with water, I'm going to take a drop of water, just water, and I'm going to drop it into the center of this leaf that I just painted. I'm going to do it at the bottom as well. And what this is going to do is it's going to push these pigments to the outside. And once it gets to the outside, I'm going to clean my brush off, dry it, and then I'm going to pull up. I'm going to lift some of that liquid from the center, lift and dry, lift and dry, and I'll probably add another drop of water here to push it out just a little bit more. So what we end up having is we have this darker ring of pigment to the outside of the branches, or I'm sorry, to the outside of the leaves, and kind of this lighter on the inside. If you were with us last week, we did the exact same thing with the succulent petals. So this will be a little bit familiar to you. Okay, so let's start. We'll go ahead on this bow tie leaves. So for this bow tie, I think I'm going to do it on under my first wash is going to be of turquoise. So I'm going to paint turquoise first. And now I'm going to choose an accent color. Maybe I'll try purple this time. So I'm going to take some purple. My accent colors, I don't want as much liquid in my accent colors. So this purple, I don't have as much water in the purple that I'm dropping. Then I'll clean my brush and I'm going to drop water into the center of each leaf to push it. Then I will dry my brush and lift it from the center. And if I notice the colors doing something that I want, if I notice them going in a direction, maybe I won't lift it from there. So I kind of like how this color is flowing down to this other petal. So I think I'm just going to leave that. All right, now I'm going to keep moving down my branch and I'm going to try to alternate some of these colors. So here are the colors that I was using here. So maybe I'll do this next bow tie. Maybe I'll have some indigo as my base. Remember, the indigo is that darker blue. So maybe here I'll do some darker blue. Remember, this is just our base, so it doesn't have to be very vibrant or dark, because now we're going to drop in some of our colors. So it's been a while since I've used this green gold, so maybe I'll drop in this green gold, which is more of like a yellow. Maybe I'll drop it in this side, and maybe on the other side I haven't used magenta all too much, so maybe I'll drop in a little bit more condensed magenta. When I say condensed magenta, I mean I don't have as much water in this magenta. If I had a lot of water in the magenta and dropped it here, it would just expand. And I want the paint to stay there, so I have to have less water if I want it to stay. Now that I have my accent colors added, now I want to drop in some water to push the pigment to the outsides. So I have clean water on my brush, and I'm going to drop in the center of each leaf. Might have to do more than one. So do you see how that pigment got pushed to the outside? You can see a darker ring of pigment here. Now I'm going to dry my brush, and I'm going to lift some color in the center. If I like how this looks, I can leave it. I think I'm going to take some of that liquid out. And I think I'm just going to add another drop of magenta here. So these eucalyptus branches are just kind of fun to play around with and see how your colors combine. See how the water plays with the colors. All right, now we're on to our next hamburger. So maybe I'll go back to that undersea green, which is kind of this dusty green color. This time I think I want both these hamburgers to be a different color. So I'm going to skip this lower hamburger bun. And I'm going to go move on to the bow tie. If doing 3 of these at a time is too much for you, slow it down and do just 2 at once. I think on this side of the bow tie, I'm going to clean my brush. I think I want to actually have pure magenta on this side. So I'm going to do my under wash of magenta. Now that I have my washes underneath, now I'm going to clean my brush and choose which accent colors I want. I think I'm going to drop in some turquoise actually. So I'm going to choose either to drop turquoise to the center of the bow or to the outside of the leaves. Personally, I think that looks the best, either doing the outside or the very center instead of dropping color in the center of your leaf. It just seems to kind of create more of a 3D shape if you do it either to the center of the bow tie or the outside of the leaves. And I think I'm going to also take some indigo, which is that dark blue, and just drop some dark blue in the very center of this bow tie. All right, now that I have those colors, I'm going to clean my brush. And I'm going to drop some water in the very center of these leaves. When I drop the water in the center of the leaves, it's going to push the pigment to the edge. Dry off my brush. And now I'm going to lift some of that water and pigment. So really what we're doing here is we're making more or less transparent leaves. So you would use the same technique if you were to want to make like a transparent rose with transparent rose petals. This is a very similar technique that you would use of adding water to push the pigment to the outside and then lifting that pigment from the center. Oops, and I forgot to do something in that one. So actually, let's add some yellow maybe. Let's see, let's do more turquoise here. Just at the base. And same thing, drop water in the center, dry my brush, and lift from the center. So it really does make these jewel tone leaves seem a little bit more transparent by doing it this way. All right. I'm going to wait to do this leaf just because I know if I touch it here, it will bleed into the other petals. So I'm just going to wait here. All right, let's move on. So I'm going to alternate between this light layer of color. Then I'm going to drop in some more color, wet on wet. So let's see here. Maybe I want more magenta. So I'm going to take magenta straight from the well and just dab some magenta in here. Clean my brush, and then with a drop of water, I'm going to drop water into the center of the leaf. Clean my brush, lift from the center, and kind of make any adjustments once you're. So I noticed that actually really took out that magenta that I placed down. So now I'm just dropping it back in. This is all about playing with how much water you add, how much you lift, and cleaning your brush. So it's kind of fun. It's almost like you're creating a type. All right. And we'll continue. I just need to plug my phone in because it's about to die. So hold on 1 second here. All right, there we go. It's charging now. Here we go. Let's continue. So I've got another bow tie. Let's see here. Let's do another turquoise bow tie. This same technique would be kind of fun to do with all different colors. These jewel tones are just kind of my favorite when it comes to eucalyptus branches. Eucalyptus in nature is actually a little bit more of a dusty blue to begin with. So it kind of lends itself really well to these kind of dusty colors. So I'm just alternating between my magenta, my violet, my green gold, adding water, drying my brush, lifting from the center. Perhaps adding just a little bit more, maybe a little bit of indigo. And I'm also playing a lot with blooms here and leaving some of these rough edges that are created. Because to me, I really like how these little edges look. There are some artists who really don't like them, and that's okay, that's personal preference. But I find that there's something beautiful about how the water pushes the pigment and where it decides to dry. Then I think I'll go back to some green. Maybe a little bit more magenta at the bottom here for my base color. Then remember, I have an accent color that I'm going to add, whether it's a bright accent or a dark accent. So for this one, since I kind of used a bright anyways, I think I'm going to do a dark accent color, like an indigo here. And the beauty of this is that if I create a color that I don't like, I can simply clean my brush and lift out whatever color I don't like. So if I see something that's not mixing the way that I want it to, say I don't like that indigo, I drop some water, clean my brush, and I just lift it out. Because we're doing wet on wet, a lot of these colors you can lift out pretty easily. So it's fairly low risk, especially if you're just beginning. It's very easy to just lift a color out if you don't really like it. So I think I'm just going to add some teal instead of that indigo. Maybe I'll do some indigo in this lowest branch. All right, and then at the very bottom, like I said, maybe I'll add a little indigo down here. Now we will go back once these leaves are all dry and we will add a little bit of definition. What I mean by that, I'll show you here, is with the example, I did come back with a light wash of indigo and I added a little definition here in some of these shading of the leaves, just to add a little bit of extra texture to it. So don't be worried if you are kind of thinking that your leaves are really blending together like this. If your hamburgers are blending together, that's okay, because we'll come back and we'll add a little bit of extra definition. Let me do, I think, a little bit. I'll do one touch of yellow. This yellow, green, gold. And let me see, it looks like I'm kind of missing some magenta. I've got some magenta here, and I don't have any down in this area, so I think that's a good idea to add a little magenta down here. Did I say indigo? All right, once again, clean my brush. Get some water. I'm going to purposefully create these blooms in the center of my leaf by dropping this liquid, this water, into the center, purposefully pushing it out, cleaning my brush, and lifting from the center to create more of a transparent leaf. All right, now there was one that I kind of skipped up here, so let's see. Looks like I have some turquoise here, but I'm missing this darker indigo, so I think I'm going to do this bottom hamburger a little darker of an indigo. Basically, we're trying to just balance out these colors. Maybe I'll do a little darker there. Drop some water in. Dry my brush. Lift from one side. There we go. All right, now kind of checking over to make sure that I have every leaf, that I've painted every leaf. You can check through yours, make sure you painted every single one. While you are waiting for your leaves to dry, we can take out our micron pen and outline our mantra. Let's see. I am going to see if I left my micron pen at my other desk. So here we go. I tend to like the size 03 when I'm writing out my mantras, only because it's a nice size. I don't think it's too thick or too thin. Be very careful if you are writing out your mantra. Just be careful to not smudge your petals. Don't forget to breathe. And as I finished that, I noticed as I was reading this, I took a deep breath, which is what it's meant for all of us to remember to do. While I'm still waiting, I still notice that these are still wet. I can tell that they are wet. I can tell which are wet as well by kind of either getting down to eye level to the paper or by just turning it, tilting it slightly. You can see where I can see the reflection. Those are still wet versus this bow tie is completely dry. So I'm still waiting for a few of them to dry. That's okay. On almost all of my Mantra Monday paintings, I do add a little heart. Using some magenta mixed with a little bit of brown to create this dusty rose color. So I'm going to add my heart now. And for those of you who have been here before, I like to add this little heart to remind me of my family and friends, so that every time I see this mantra in my office, I remember that my family and friends are there to help me breathe and to help me calm down whenever I'm a little too stressed, and that I can always reach out to them if I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed and forgetting to breathe. So now, as we're waiting for this to finish drying, I'm going to show you a little bit about how to mix the color for the stem. Now, for this example, I mixed an indigo. So here's my indigo. I just want a dark color for my stem. So I mixed an indigo, and I think I added a little bit of turquoise to it, along with perhaps a little bit of green. Yeah, I added a little green to make it a little bit more deeper of a color. Depending on what yours looks like. So I think that looks a little bit too bright to me. So I think I'm going to add just a little bit of brown. Adding brown to any of your colors is going to obviously make it a little bit darker. So I'm going to test that out. I think I like that as a color. It's hard for you to see at home, but this is what the color is. So it's almost like a greenish tone to an indigo, but a very subtle green. If you have a brush, if you've been working with a round brush and you would like a smaller brush for the detail to make a smaller line, I would suggest to switch to that brush now. I think I'm going to still stay with my same favorite brush, but if you have a smaller brush, I don't even have that many brush examples to show you, but for example, if you wanted to switch to a smaller line brush to do more line work, I would suggest doing that now. All right, so now I want to be cautious. This hamburger is not dry yet, so I don't want to do the line touching that at all, okay? So you're going to have to look at yours. You can either wait and not do the stem until tomorrow if you are nervous about this, or you can kind of pick yours up and tilt it and see which are dry and which are not. This section down here is dry. This section in the middle is dry. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate to you right now. But for you to know, you'll have to look at yours to make sure that it's dry first. So the stem, as I mentioned earlier as we were drawing this, we're going to be going through the center of the bow tie, but then when we come to these hamburgers, we're going to draw the stem, paint the stem through the top of the hamburger bun, but we are not going to paint through the bottom of the hamburger bun. That's going to create this illusion that this leaf is facing us. So I'm going to show you what that looks like here. So I'm not going to touch this one because it's still dry. So I'm just going to start here. I'm going to come through this bow tie. Then I'm going to continue painting through the top of this hamburger bun, but not through the bottom. Now continue it on the other side. through the bow tie, through the top of the hamburger bun, and then stop. And then I continue at the bottom. I'm not going to go through here because this is still wet, so I'm going to kind of skip it, come down through the top of the hamburger bun, not through the bottom. And once my stem comes to the bottom, it does get slightly larger, so you can have your stem a little, just a tad bit thicker at the bottom. I am going to do the top here because it is dry, but I'm not going to go through this one. So these are the two that are wet still. I'm going to have to wait for that. Now, there is one last step, so I'm going to clean my brush. The very last step is to add some of the, and this is optional, you don't have to do this, but the very last step is to add some of these little details with a light wash of either turquoise or indigo. So you get to choose based on your eucalyptus branch. So when I put both of these next to each other, I noticed that mine that I just painted is a lot more vibrant than the example. So if I want it to look a little bit less vibrant, like this one on the left, I might use a less vibrant wash on top, like an indigo, because my indigo as a light wash, let me show you an example. Here's my indigo as a light wash, and when I add indigo over a color that's bright, obviously it's going to dim it a little bit. You can choose if you want yours to be a little bit more turquoise, then choose to do a light wash of turquoise. If you want yours to be a little bit more magenta, choose a light wash of magenta. So I'm going to choose a light wash of indigo. I'm going to show you on my palette here. Let me get this up here. So here's my indigo, and I'm just going to add quite a bit of water here because I do not want it to be that dark. I just want a light wash on top. So here I have quite a bit of water. And I'm going to, let me go a little bit closer. I'm only going to be doing this on the leaves that are already dry. So I'm going to make sure to stick close to my stem. So here I'm adding it to the stem, and I might just add it touching the stem and coming maybe on the bottom. Now when I come to the hamburger here, I might use this indigo color to differentiate one hamburger versus the other. You see how I just added a little bit to make that hamburger stick out a little? So I'm going to do another light wash. I'm not going to cover the whole leaf. I'm just adding it to little sections. And this is, like I said, this is not something that you have to add. You do not have to do this. I'm just adding a little bit of texture to the painting. So I'm coming at the center, and I'm doing kind of like a V shape on each side. Or I might paint the whole hamburger with a light wash on top just to differentiate it from the hamburger below. Now this one hopefully is dry enough now. So I am going to add a little bit of indigo here to the center just so that I can kind of differentiate these two. Same thing here. I'm going to paint one of my hamburger buns with this light wash. Whoops. If you do not like how these kind of dark shadows are looking, you can clean your brush, dry it off a little bit, just slightly. Don't like pull off all the liquid. And then with a slightly damp brush, you're just going to blend those edges if you don't like how hard those edges look. So remember, this is with a damp brush, not a wet brush. If your brush is totally wet, you're going to create a bloom. But if your brush is damp, it's a good tool for blending out. I think I'm going to also blend this. So dabbing off any extra liquid with a damp brush, not with a wet brush. And some of these I actually like the hardness of that line, so I'm going to keep it like that. All right. Now I am going to have to wait until a little bit later to finish this stem in these areas that are still wet, but that is pretty much it. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to wait for it all to dry, and then tomorrow is when I'm going to erase any lines I see. So that is it. That's how I paint a colorful eucalyptus spray. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please follow me on social media, check out my website, and make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel.